Here we have derivation 314. So we'll go ahead and show the conclusion. That is a, make an indirect assumption. That's a negation of a universal, so we'll QN. Remember, I'm using Shift-Enter to re-execute the commands. It's an existential, so we can go ahead and instantiate it. This is the negation of a conditional, so we'll go ahead and apply NC. And we're done. So note that you can actually do a whole bunch at once. If you say oh, I'm going to, instead of sort of having a whole bunch of lines, right? So you could, instead of doing, oops, 2 QN, and then 3 EI to I, and then 4 NC. Now you have 3 lines, and these are all lines you're probably never going to look at again. You can instead do, oh, well, it's an indirect, okay, well, I know I want to do QN. Oh, I want to know, I know I want to do EI. Oh, I know I want to do NC. There's one disadvantage to this, which is that it's possible that you might want to use this at some point for something besides QN, and so when you string it all together like this, that disappears. That is a disadvantage to doing it this way. That said, it's pretty handy. Okay. So now we look at premise 1 and premise 2. Well, we can instantiate premise 1 is a universal, and so we can instantiate it to I. And we can split off the left conjunct of I and do simplification. And we can go ahead and split off the right conjunct of 2 as well. And might as well remove that double negation, because we're probably not going to need it. Who knows? Now we look at premise 2. This is a conditional. So we can't do instantiate either of the quantifiers because one's in the antecedent and one's inside of the consequent negated. So there's no instantiating to be done. How to use a conditional? Modus ponens or modus tollens. So can we do modus ponens or modus tollens? Well, to do modus ponens, we need the antecedent, we need some x, blah, 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 blah. We don't have some x, blah, blah, blah. To do modus tollens, well, we need the negation of the consequent. So what we need is that. So can we get that? Well, in fact, we can. That's premise 2, double negation. Whoop, no. Premise 1, double negation, right? Because premise 1 is, right, for all x if fx and gx. So premise 1, double negated, is this. Now, we've used premise 1 here, ui, and that's fine. But we can also do other things to it. So we can use this one premise in multiple ways. And in fact, that's exactly what we want to do. So we'll go ahead and do modus tollens here. That's the negation of an existential, so we can go ahead and do QN. Now let's UI. Oh, so I should make a comment here. Let's say you have the negation of an existential. Okay. Somehow you got it. And you think, oh, I want to do Q. Whoops. That's not what we wanted. Let's say, so let's say you have the negation of an existential. Okay, so there it is. Let's say you get it somehow, and you think, oh, I want to do QN. Think, oh, it would be a good idea to do I. This is a bad idea. You never want to hide a universal. Once you have a universal, then you want to leave it there so you can instantiate it to maybe to I, and then later to J, and then later to K, and so on, as you need. So don't ever hide a universal in a stack of queuing. Okay, so to go back to the derivation we were in, we had just instantiated line 9, which is a universal, to this. Now this is the negation of a disjunction, so we'll go ahead and De Morgan's it. Okay, so let's split up this conjunction. That's the negation of a conjunction, so we can De Morgan's it. 10SR, that's also the negation of a conjunction, so we're going to De Morgan's it. So let's see if we can use 11 or 12. Turns out we can use not JI with line 12 for modus tollens, so 612 MTP, modus MTP, excuse me. And that contradicts lines 4, so we have an indirect derivation. So there we go. So in this case, we turn out, let's see, do we actually use GI ever? No, and we don't use that either. So this, we instantiate the premise with this universal in premise 1. We instantiate it to I. We don't actually need to do this, as it turns out. The only way in which we use this premise 1 is here, when we double negate it, and then do modus tollens with the other premise. So in fact, this shows that sometimes, just because it has a quantifier in it, maybe you end up never instantiating it. And then once we break up the second premise and get it down to this universal, we instantiate this universal. The only thing to instantiate it to is I, and then at this point we have our chapter 2 set of sentences that we can, or chapter 1 and 2 set of sentences, our propositional sentences, our quantifier free sentences, and they're inconsistent, and we're able to draw out the contradiction between 3 and 11. So there you go, that's 314. I hope that was helpful.